federal government body mandated to provide assistance and protection to various migrant groups, including refugees, internally displaced persons, and returnees, etc. The commission was originally created in 1989 as the National Commission for Refugees, based on the 1957 Convention relating to the rights of refugees and its 1967 protocol, of which Nigeria acceded to. The Commission is mandated to handle all issues pertaining to refugees and asylum seekers in Nigeria in partnership with the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, UNHCR. With the increasing cases of migration-related challenges in Nigeria and beyond, 2009 expanded the mandate of the Commission to include provision of durable solutions to internally displaced persons, coordination and policy development for migration-related matters. The National Commission for Refugees, Migrants, and the Internally Displaced Persons, IDPs, is broadly charged with the responsibility of providing assistance, protection, and durable solutions to Nigeria's person of concern, which includes asylum seekers, refugees, IDPs, returnees, and stateless persons. This edition of Platform focuses on the Commission's mandate and what durable solutions are being advocated for asylum seekers, refugees, IDPs, returnees, and stateless persons. Our guest is Sadia Umar Farouk, Nigeria's Honorable Federal Commissioner, National Commission for Refugees, Migrants, and Internally Displaced Persons. She is from Zurmi, local government area of Zamfara State, and holds 2 postgraduate degrees, all from the Ahmadu Bello University's area. They are Masters in International Affairs and Diplomacy in 2008, and Masters in Business Administration, MBA, in 2011. She was appointed Honorable Federal Commissioner in September 26, 2016, and since assumption of office, developed a strategic roadmap of action that will reposition the National Commission for Refugees, Migrants, and IDPs as the lead government agency responsible for coordination, protection, and assistance of persons of concern. What are the durable solutions to persons of concern, and how effective are the implementation of standardized procedures of research, data gathering, planning, rehabilitation, reintegration, readmittance of persons of concern? Sadia Umar Farouk, Honorable Federal Commissioner, National Commission for Refugees, Migrants, and Internally Displaced Persons. Welcome to Platform.
Thank you very much, Muhammad Kudu.
As usual, we have a set of panelists, 2 of them, very distinguished ones for that matter. Joy Osiagu, Manager News, NTA News 24, is here.
Thank you, Kudu, for having me.
Makud Simon Machan, Manager News, and our foreign desk correspondent is also here.
Thank you, Kudu. It's a pleasure being with you again.
That's why I say I have distinguished panelists, because these are people whose tough it is to talk about all these issues. So as I guide the discussion, you guys will bring the expert questions. Once again, Hajia Sadia Umar Farouk, welcome to Platform.
Thank you very much.
For the purpose of clarification, who is a refugee? Who is an IDP? And how many of these refugees or IDPs exist officially in Nigeria?
Well, let me start by giving an overview of what the Commission's mandate is, though you have highlighted that. But as you mentioned, the National Commission for Refugees, Migrants, and Internally Displaced Persons is a government body that's mandated to give assistance and protection to different migrant groups, refugees, migrants, asylum seekers, IDPs, as well as returnees. The Commission was established by Decree 21, LFN 2004, to give support and assistance to these refugees and asylum seekers. Originally, that was the mandate of the Commission as a fallout to the UN Convention, 1951 UN Convention, and its 1967 protocol, which Nigeria is a signatory to. And since then, the Commission has been carrying out these mandates to the best of its ability. But by 2004, the mandate of the Commission was expanded via a presidential directive to also proffer durable solutions to IDPs, as well as to coordinate migration-related matters. Durable solutions in the sense that you give durable solutions to people so that they can be able to cater for themselves. It's not just about giving assistance, but you should be able to support people to earn their own livelihoods. And that is what the Commission has been doing. Let me go back to the question of who is a refugee. A refugee is somebody or a group of people who have fled their countries for fear of persecution, and they have crossed an international border. And these people have to be given asylum in the country that they have sought the asylum for. It's their right to be given that asylum. They are given asylum before you determine whether they should be refugees or not, because they have to go through a process of refugees status determination. And once they are eligible, their claims are eligible, they are given the status. But even before a refugee is being given the refugee status and determination, it is mandatory upon the country that they are seeking these asylums that we give them protection and assistance. And Nigeria has been doing that to the refugees that have fled into the country. So far, in 2017, Nigeria has witnessed an unprecedented influx of Cameroonian refugees into the country as a result of the political impasse in that country. And we have received them through different points, through Cross River State, Benue, and Taraba State. And since that time, we have been registering them. And as I mentioned earlier, we've been giving them support by way of care and maintenance. And we are continuing to do more. The process of registration is still ongoing, but as at today, I know that we have over 30,000 of them that are in between Cross Rivers, Taraba, and Benue State. And Mohammed, it might interest you to know that Nigeria does not operate an encampment policy for refugees.
Why?
So refugees, when they come, because their rights has to be protected, and it is against the convention to really restrict them or to confine them to one place. It is good you give them opportunity to move freely, as well as to seek for meaningful economic opportunities.
So
and
are you saying what most of the EU countries are doing to Nigerian migrants, or if you like, African migrants,
yes,
asylum seekers,
or asylum seekers, is against the convention?
It is really against the convention because a refugee is covered by protection. They are supposed to be protected. And once you confine someone in a particular place, you are infringing on his right to movement. So the Nigerian government does not encamp refugees when they come. We give them shelter, we support them, and most of the refugees that had come through these border towns of Benue, Cross River, and Taraba, they live even within the host communities because they share almost the same cultural values and affiliations. So most of them are living within the host communities. But what we are facing now as a result of that is that these refugees are scattered all over, and the terrain is not very good. Access to the intervention is very difficult. So we've now decided to write to the two governments of Cross Rivers and Benue to give us land where we can keep these people, a kind of shelter place for them. We don't want to call it an encampment because they will not be restricted to movement.
Okay.
They will not be restricted to movement, and they can go about earning their livelihoods.
Federal Commissioner, still talking about this issue of refugees and the large number we have in Nigeria. I remember you traveled to Geneva recently, and in your presentation, the focus was on some of the challenges you're facing with this large number, huge number of refugees. What is the response you got from the international community in terms of support to deal with this issue, since those who came in are sharing facilities with the original owners?
Yes, and the Geneva conference is an annual conference. It's an annual conference of executive committees of the commissioners for refugees all over the world. So we gather every year to discuss issues and the way forward. But as I said, refugees are being covered by protection. They have protection and cover according to the UN Convention. So their own status is not as difficult as the status of other migrant groups. Yes, when they come into the country, it's unprecedented. You've not expected that, but when they come, you have to live up to your responsibility of taking care of them. So nations come together every year to see how they can strengthen the support and the assistance that these countries give to these refugees when they come into their country. And that is why we're always in partnership with the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. We work together when these issues of refugees come on board.
So what sort of support were you able to get?
We get technical support.
Yeah.
We get even logistic support, because in the area of this registration, we do it together. It requires a lot of personnel. And even in areas of health, we give them some kind of health cover. We share the responsibility. And even on the conventional travel document that we're working on now, it's still a partnership between us and the United Nations High Commission for Refugees, as well as the Nigerian Immigration Service. So it's a partnership and collaboration, and we enjoy all this support.
Still talking about partnership and support, tell us a bit about the kind of partnership you have with Switzerland.
Well, the Switzerland partnership, I will call, is a very good model. And it is so because it centers on how you're going to support these irregular migrants when they are coming back home. There's a package that is being modeled for those voluntary returns, people that want to return voluntarily. There's an AVVR package, an assisted voluntary package for them, voluntary return and integration package for them, so that when they come back home, they'll be able to have something to do, and they will not think of finding their way back to Europe, going through all the risks they go through.
Now, I'm just wondering, Honorable Commissioner, during the height of Boko Haram, a lot of Nigerians took refuge in Cameroon, some in Chad, some in Niger, and so on. What is your mandate concerning Nigerians who are in other countries as refugees? Do you have any oversight on them? And
yes, there are refugees, they are our nationals as refugees in another country. Last year, there was a tripartite agreement that was signed between the government of Nigeria, Cameroon, and United Nations High Commission for Refugees for the voluntary repatriation of our nationals that are in Cameroon. And that agreement was to ensure the safe and voluntary return of these nationals. And we have started implementing an action plan to that regards. There was a visit by both sides of the committee. The Cameroonian people came to Nigeria for a come and see, together with some leaders of the refugees, to come and see the situation in Nigeria and go back and report to their other brothers and sisters what the situation is, so that they will be better informed on whether on the decision they will take whether to come back home or not. And then a delegation again from Nigeria, we went to Cameroon. We sat with the government of Cameroon as well as the refugees themselves. And most of them indicated interest that they want to come back home. And in that agreement, the plan of action is there, and the principles for the return is there, because it says voluntary return. You cannot force somebody to return back. And we expect the Cameroonian government to respect that aspect of the agreement. And for us on our part, we should also ensure that when these people come back home, we're able to cater for them and integrate them back into the society. And that is what we're doing. We're almost at the last stage of the repatriation before we had some little technical hitches, and we hope that will resume very soon.
Talking of hitches, the Nigerians that you have in Cameroon as refugees, you said you have about 30,000 Cameroonians here in Nigeria.
Yeah, yes.
How many Nigerians do we have in Cameroon?
We have about 97,000 Nigerians, mostly from Borno and Adamawa State. About 87 of them are from Borno State, while just less than 6,000 from Adamawa State.
And so far, how many of them are willing to come back?
And has your office visited them?
Yes,
to see their
as I
condition?
mentioned, we went to Cameroon and we went to the camp where these people are kept, and almost all of them expressed their willingness to want to come back home. So it's quite a large number of the people that want. In fact, some of them even said they don't mind to go to another state, but they just are eager to come back home.
What is their condition?
Well, the condition is really is good, because they have all the basic amenities in that camp where they are. There's very good water system there. We've visited where they have the tanks, and they are going about their normal lives. It's a very massive place where they are. They engage in different economic activities, because, there's no way you can sustain giving people, that large number of people, relief materials or food. It's just not sustainable. So you just have to open ways for them to engage in some kind of economic activities.
Is it the sort of land that you are looking for between Taraba and Benue?
That is the sort of land that we are looking for, because so that ours is because of the accessibility to take intervention. That is why, because as I mentioned earlier, Nigeria does not support or does not encourage encampment policy. So, but because of the terrain they are scattered, so it's better you bring them in one place so that you can take interventions together.
So what has it been the response of the Taraba and Benue State government?
No, not Taraba, sorry. It's Cross Rivers. Yes, we've written to them and they've responded. In fact, Benue State has already given us a land, which we are working on together with the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees.
Still talking about reintegration, how do you intend to deal with those who might not want to stay where you want to keep them? Probably they want to return back to their ancestral homes.
That is why it is voluntary. They have the right to choose where they want to go back home, but with a caveat that that place that they want to go back must be safe. So even if they want to go back to a place and that place is not safe for them to return, we will not allow, we'll give them another option.
Well, we certainly cannot go away and not talk about other things, but we may come back to the issue of refugees again, but tell us more about this strategic roadmap of action that you developed upon your assumption of duty on the 26th of September 2016.
Yes, when I came on board, I felt that it is good that we have a plan that will guide the activities of the Commission for the next 4 years. And so we engage different people, critical stakeholders, to come up with this strategic roadmap, a document, which we were able to launch to the management staff of the Commission as well as the other cadre staff, for them to buy into it. And let us see how we can reposition the Commission to be one of the best, if not the world-class leading humanitarian agency in the country. And so far, we have started doing that, especially in the area of these durable solutions, which is our core mandate. You cannot give a durable solution without really knowing the people that you're going to give this durable solution. So data is one of the key aspects of that strategic roadmap. We felt that if you have a robust data management system, you'll be able to efficiently and effectively carry out your mandate by way of giving this support and assistance to internally displaced persons. System strengthening is also one of the key actors in the roadmap to see how we can strengthen the system by way of its legal reforms. As it is now, the Commission's mandate was expanded, as I mentioned, via a presidential directive, but we need an enabling act to back it up. So we are following up that with the National Assembly, and it is almost at its final stage. There's also the issue of the IDP policy, which we are also at the forefront of seeing that the country adopts a national IDP policy, where the roles and responsibilities of every agency that has migration or IDP-related matter will be spelled out, and people will now be responsible for these roles.
Because for now, FEMA is doing something else. NEMA, sorry, is doing something, and you are doing. I see a situation where there could be duplications.
Well, you see, you really cannot avoid overlap, but what we're trying to see with that IDP policy is that, as I said, every agency's role and responsibility will be clearly spelled out. We know what the role of NEMA is or what it should be, and we also know what the roles of the National Commission for Refugees, Migrants, and Internally Displaced Persons should be. Once that is done, I don't think we will have these issues of duplication.
Now, while you wait for that policy, what are you doing in terms of synergy to ensure that you succeed right now?
We are working with different stakeholders, NEMA inclusive. We are working with NAPTIP, we are working with Nigerian Immigration Service, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, MBBS, all these agencies that have one thing or the other to do with the issues of IDPs and refugees.
So staying on your vision, we know that once you are the vision holder, there is a need to carry along those who work with you so they can run with that vision for you to succeed. What are you doing in terms of working with those who are in the commission to ensure that they share your vision and run with it?
As I mentioned, this strategic roadmap was unveiled. In fact, we made sure that the active participation of the commission is carried out, is embedded in that document, because they were part of the development of the document, and after which we had a retreat on the same document of the management staff of the commission, after which we came down to the lower cadre. We had also another workshop for them to own the document, and so far, so good.
Now, on that document, I don't have a copy, so I don't know the details. But what does it say about the psychology of either the IDP or the refugee or the displaced person, whether he's resettled or at the end of the day, he or she has been exposed to so many things, to violence, to
so much trauma,
and so on. What does your policy say about, what do you do with them really as they get to settle down, whether in their ancestral places or in some new places?
That is also part of the durable solution, because if people are really traumatized, and they might lose their bearing. So it is very important that you counsel them. We do this as psychosocial support to them by engaging experts in that field to counsel them, to talk to them. That is the psychosocial support. So that we are also doing before you even start thinking of taking them or resettling them back to their communities.
Well, I think we will still need a little bit of elaboration from you. Durable solution is omnibus word. Let's look at what you will be doing in the area of resettlement, in the area of rehabilitation, in the area of reintegration, readmittance of persons of concern.
Yes, durable solution is all-encompassing, and
Yeah.
this is all these things that you mentioned. They are the components of the durable solution. We've had a model in Kebbi when we had some displacement over the years. We moved the people from there. It's like an incursion into a particular community by the Benin Republic. They were sharing a
Nationals of Benin Republic.
Yes, so we had to move our nationals away from that area to resettle them into another area. We've done that. In this 2018 budget, we've also made provision for this resettlement and integration. We're working with the Borno State government on a pilot scheme. They've given us a place where we're going to build and resettle people. But that also with a caveat. Even if we want to resettle now, unless the situation is safe for these people to return. So what we do mostly now is really by way of empowering these people. We give them different kinds of training, different kinds of trade, so that they can be economically self-reliant. Like I mentioned, you just cannot sustain giving people food every day. That is what our main area of focus. Empowerment of these persons of concern.
And on the issue of empowerment, I want us to look at migrants. You met a few of them in New York when you went there for the United Nations General Assembly. There are some migrants that are skilled, and their intention is to come back and give back to the Commission. There was a particular person who offered to come and help with training of IDPs in some special areas. What kind of provision do you have for people like that? Those who are just coming back to give back to the society?
Yes, those people, when they approach us, we are ready to work with them as partners. And this issue of migration, irregular migration, is really a phenomenon. It's a global issue. On our own part, what we're trying to do is to sensitize the general public on the ills and dangers of this irregular migration. Migration cannot be stopped at all. But what we're saying that if you must migrate, you should do it in a safe, orderly, and regular manner. And that is what we are advocating. We are taking our advocacy to all the zones. Now we've started going to the higher institutions where really the decision to migrate takes place amongst the youth, because this supposedly greener pasture that people think they will go and get, we tell them that it's not really the case.
And for you to succeed in terms of advocacy, there's a need to work with the sub-nationals. How are they reacting to you?
We are working with the National Orientation Agency. We are also working with other NGOs to help us carry out this sensitization to the grassroots. And everywhere we have a national migration dialogue where all the critical stakeholders come together to discuss the way forward on how to, tackle this issue of irregular migration.
Well, Haja, it's good that you are going to the route to tackle the matter of migration. But surprisingly, even as people return with horrific stories, others are
still on the way
yearning to go.
That's right.
And in fact, some come back and tell you they will try again. Meanwhile, they spend hundreds of thousands, if not millions, to go. To what extent do the family setting, for instance?
You see, that is just the human nature. You don't know. Well, on our own part, we are trying our best to see that we really sensitize people, and we are giving them testimonies of people that went and they didn't have it easy. We went to Libya. There was a committee that was set up by Mr. President that was led by the Minister of Foreign Affairs to go and meet with the government of Libya and start the process of evacuating back our nationals that are stranded in Libya. It was a horrific situation. What we saw that day when we went to the shelters or to the transit camps where they were kept was an eyesore. So I don't know how somebody will want to go through that if he's really in his right sense of mind. So we'll continue to advocate, we'll continue to sensitize. And then another thing, we should make provision for these people to engage them so that they have something to do. I believe if you really have something to do, you have a stake here, you will not want to leave.
But what is the engagement for perhaps a sister agency in, let's say, Libya, the countries that are maybe transit countries and so on? Do you have any engagement with those people as regards the treatment? Because recently, some reports from North African countries shows that they are picked wherever they get you, they pick you and take you to the front line, the border to Nigeria, just dump you in the middle of the desert and so on.
You know, most countries will not own up to these things until when you have real evidence. And I'm sure the government of Nigeria is doing very well to see that our nationals are treated with dignity.
You have better evidence in Libya. So
we had a better evidence, and since we came back, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs has been engaging the Libyan government. You know, Libya has issues. It's not just even one government. We're only able to go to Tripoli, where there's semblance of sanity. But most of those people that are really maltreated are not even within that vicinity. We can't even access really. But IOM is doing also a good job.
How has your commission been able to engage the Nigerian diasporans who are skilled, collection of skilled manpower that are abroad that you can use in this your advocacy?
Yes, as I mentioned, we are working with different government bodies. We have an office of the diaspora, and we are working with them to see we've traveled and so many times together.
When you say we are working, what kind of work?
Working as in to see how we can tap this expertise of these people for us to persuade them to come back home. And most of them gladly really want to come back home. It's just that the decision to come back is difficult maybe for them, but they want to come back.
Federal Commissioner, at the United Nations General Assembly in September, you attended one of the major events, which was captioned, "Saying No to Modern-Day Slavery, a Call to Action." And it was obvious from that event that this is a complex issue. It is not peculiar to Nigeria alone. There are many countries who gave testimonies of the challenges they face. And it was a good opportunity for countries to network with other countries to see what they're doing to make this situation better in their own countries. What did you take away from that event? Were you able to network with some other bodies, especially international bodies?
Yes, so we've met with, as you mentioned, with different bodies. And that conference was really a call to action, say no to modern-day slavery. But you know, this modern-day slavery is a kind of an international syndicate body, you know, that has to be tackled by respective governments globally. Because you have to know these syndicates before you be able to address the issue. And for us, we are a humanitarian agency, really. So ours is limited to really when these people come back, we take care of them.
All right, in terms of support, were you able to network with some of these international agencies?
Yes, we have. You know, already we have IOM, we have UNHCR. We have the Norwegian Refugee Council that we're working with and other NGOs.
the kind of work we do suggests that you need a lot of funding. And you have a roadmap which you launch and so on and so forth. Is the money there? I mean,
Well,
are you well funded to
the
do this
money
work?
can never be enough. We'll always ask for more, but truly it's a very big challenge. Paucity of funds is our major challenge because as it is now, we are only funded through budgetary allocation, and that is really inadequate. But we hope that once we get our act reenacted, we'll be able to have other sources of funding.
So where are you at the stage of having the act?
It is at its final stage. I think it's
Oh,
going
really?
back for, yes.
You've done the public hearing?
We've done the public, we've done the first, second, third reading. And
Wow.
we're almost done, inshallah.
That was fast. You know the
We
National
tried.
Assembly system very well then. Now, you are a distinguished woman politician. It will be interesting to hear from you. What's your assessment of women's participation in politics, first in Zamfara State and maybe Nigeria at large?
See, that's not a fair question, Mohammed. Why are you starting with my state? Well, yeah, I
Charity
am
begins
a
at
woman politician, and I am from Zamfara State. And I will tell you that women participate very actively in Zamfara State. I think we even have 2 or 3 women that have been given federal appointments from Zamfara State. I know of myself, I know of Fatima Shinkafi, and one other one. And when it comes to politics really, women are very active in Zamfara State. So we hope that women will be more active or will be more
You know why I asked you that question,
participatory
and I
in
said you should start
politics.
from Zamfara. Zamfara is known as a state that is conservative, both in religion and ethnicity, coloration, and what have you. So, how is it? What is actually happening? Coming from you, everybody will want to hear.
You know, I went for an election in Zamfara State in 2014. I wanted to contest for the House of Representatives. And the reception I got was really unbelievable. It was my first outing, and I was really received by the people. It was really overwhelming, you know, but somewhere along the line, I didn't make it, but I was given the opportunity.
You didn't make it at the stage of the primaries?
At the stage of the primaries, definitely. At the stage of I was, in my constituency, I think I was the only woman, maybe in Zamfara State, I was the only woman that came out to contest for that position, but I was given the chance to do that, and I was widely accepted by the people. So I will not say that because of conservativeness or I don't think there's even anything like ethnicity in Zamfara State, maybe religious aspect of it, but I was accepted and I was given the chance
So
to
it was the
contest.
political party that disenfranchised you then?
It was the powers that be that disenfranchised me, not even the political party.
Now, talking about primaries generally, different phases were brought into the political lexicon of Nigeria. Direct primaries, indirect primaries, and what have you. Which one do you think favors women politicians most?
Any one of them can favor them. Direct primaries has its own advantages and it also has its own disadvantages. So also indirect. It depends on the particular or the peculiar environment one is coming from. There's nothing wrong with direct primaries, but some people are saying it's not easy to manage or to handle. It can be porous. In direct primaries, people are scared of the delegates, you know. If you don't maybe have money, it will be very difficult for you. So whichever one, it has its own advantages and disadvantages. And I think the most important thing for a candidate or an aspirant is for him to get the support of his constituents.
All right, Federal Commissioner, I would like to take you back to the issue of migration. I know that there's a major summit coming up in Morocco towards the end of the year, and I know that Nigeria is also preparing for that summit as well as some other member countries. What is the objective of Nigeria and Africa when you get to Morocco?
Well, the objective is for Nigeria and Africa to adopt a common compact, a common policy. That's the Global Compact on Migration, which will be transmitted to the United Nations. We've had series of conferences where inputs were gathered from different critical stakeholders in the country. We went to AU. We presented our position as Nigeria, and then the African position was also developed. And that is what is going to be adopted in Marrakesh by the heads of government.
What are some of the critical issues, if you could let us in?
Well, the critical issues mainly are the issue of how we are going to tackle this issue of irregular migration, and then also the issue of aligning migration with development. We want to really move away from the narratives of this negativism of migration. It also has its own positive impacts. So we want to see how we can harness that with these developing countries where our nationals migrate to, so that there won't be need for them to go through the irregular routes to migrate. If the system is strengthened, these strict visa policies are relaxed, and then we have exchange of labor between us, it will be much more tidier for people to want to migrate, and then after a period of time, they come back. So this is all what is in that compact.
Are you going there with a side line event?
Yes, we hope to have a side event in Marrakesh.
Now,
like
what?
On bringing the people, the critical stakeholders on board to see how we can champion this cause of moving away from the negatives to the positive narratives.
In Marrakesh, you just told us you will be looking at migration along with development. What will you say to the irony, or if you like, the challenge of the two narratives now? Nigerians or Africans who migrate to Europe or the United States, most of them are unskilled, are already skilled. And then, whereas we have unskilled ones also going there and then becoming modern slave, becoming victims of modern slavery. So how do you marry the two, and then how can we get development?
You see, even the people that go through the irregular route, it might surprise you to know that most of them are even graduates. Really. So if we have a partnership with these developed countries, okay, these people want to come to learn certain kind of job, for a period of time. We will sign an agreement. They can go do that and come back home and practice that trade that they must have learned. And that's why we are linking migration with development.
Now, there's something that is often said that, when there is crisis, the first victims are women and children. I'm wondering to what extent you have seen that in your work, whether here in Nigeria or out of Nigeria. Does it really reflect in what you are doing?
Oh yes, they are.
And
they are
if
always,
so, what then is the way out for people that have been caught up in this kind of...
Especially that you're working on a migration policy.
Yes, they are always the most hit. They are the vulnerable groups, women and children, and we always give special attention to this group. Even in our intervention, we make sure that we cater for them. Women, their health issues, issue of their hygiene and sanitation, issue of there's this thing we call the dignity kit, when we give them nutrition for the children. So we will always make sure that we capture the needs of these vulnerable groups.
What
in
of
our
education?
intervention.
What of education? Does
yes,
it come up in
it's
this
part
kind
of it. Education, health, they're all very important. We take educational kids to the camps.
Okay.
We take educational kids to the way we are. This time around, we are even going to start this feeding program for the children in the camp in this 2018 intervention. We give them school uniforms, school bags, lunch box, writing and reading materials. That is also part of the intervention we take to the children as far as education is concerned.
Now that we're talking about women and children, I visited an IDP camp recently, and I noticed that truly most of those you find there are women and children. And I also, it was on a Saturday, I noticed that many non-governmental organizations were there. And I want to find out from your commission, what are you doing to ensure that some of these non-governmental organizations don't take advantage of these vulnerable people to make money off them? Because we've had that in the past.
Yes, you know, there are procedures of allowing these international organizations or not governmental organizations to participate in the intervention that we give to these displaced people. Before you can do that, I think you have to be registered. It has to go through the Ministry of Budget and National Planning. So if those people are being screened and registered, we must allow them to go and work in the camps. Ours is for us to be very vigilant so that we don't have such cases. And when we have such cases, we report them to the appropriate authorities. As I always say.
Who is responsible for the coordination of the assistance and support that these agencies give to the IDPs?
You see, honestly, this is a very big question. We have NEMA that's supposed to coordinate camp management. The Commission's mandate is to coordinate the durable solution aspect of it, which we are doing. The UN body also has its own coordination group that is coordinating all the UN agencies under its umbrella. So there are different phases of coordination, with different types of coordination as far as the issue of
Kudu, you see, that's where the
IDP
challenge of
process.
synergy comes in, because you find these non-governmental organizations taking pictures and writing back to donor agencies abroad to say this is what they're doing. And most of the funding does not get.
They give only 5% and take 95%.
Exactly.
That's right.
So I think that's a big challenge, and the IDP policy you are working on
is going to address all these issues, definitely.
The act you're also trying to bring together should all either specify, either it should be your commission or NEMA or whichever agency, or NAPTIP, I think.
You know, in the policy, like I mentioned, there are different thematic leads. When it comes to issues of trafficking, it's definitely NAPTIP that will coordinate. When it comes to issues of emergency, it should be NEMA. But when it comes to issues of rehabilitation, resettlement, reintegration, empowerment, this is the National Commission for Refugees, Migrants, and Internally Displaced Persons that should do that. On the issues of health, we have Federal Ministry of Health. When it comes to education, Federal Ministry of Education. So, like I said, this IDP policy is just the best thing that can happen to this country once it is adopted, because every agency's role and responsibility is clearly spelled out.
Will be spelled out. Very last question. You have just 1 minute to answer it. As a politician from Zamfara, how do you feel when INEC says you are not fielding nobody for the 2019 general elections?
Of course, it was very devastating, and I hope that it will not be so, that something will happen.
Hajiya Saduya Umar Farouk, Federal Commissioner, National Commission for Refugees, Migrants, and the Internally Displaced Persons. Thank you so very much for coming on platform.
Thank you.
And we look forward to you having this IGP policy, to having the Enabling Act, and then we will bring you back again and see how far so far.
Thank you so much for having me, Mohammed.
Joy Osiagu, as usual, you did not disappoint me. Thank you so very much for your insights.
Thank you for having me.
Makut Simon Macha, always there.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much.
For me.
The imperative of finding durable solutions to the challenge of persons of concern, which includes asylum seekers, refugees, IDPs, returnees, and stateless persons, was our focus in the past 50 minutes. Our guest, Sadia Umar Farouk, Federal Commissioner, National Commission for Refugees, Migrants, and IDPs, emphasized the need to implement standardized procedures and the Commission's roadmap for